"That ring isn't real, sir." The boy's voice was so small that, for a moment, Nathaniel Carrington thought the words had come from inside his own head. He was standing at the back of St. Augustine's Cathedral, in the narrow vestibule where the groom waits before the doors open, adjusting the cuff of his shirt for the third time in 5 minutes. The cathedral organ was already playing softly somewhere beyond the heavy oak doors, and he could hear the muffled hum of 300 guests on the other side, the same 300 guests whose names he had memorized from a seating chart his fiancée had handed him 2 weeks earlier. Everything was exactly as it should be. The boutonniere was pinned straight. The rings were in the velvet box his best man had been carrying since morning. The light through the stained glass behind him made a small pattern of red and gold across the marble floor at his feet. And somewhere in the upstairs gallery, a violinist was warming up with a phrase Nathaniel half recognized from his mother's old records. And yet the boy was still standing there in the side doorway near the sacristy, holding a small bunch of white lilies that was meant for the flower girl, watching him with the kind of steady patience that did not belong on a child. "What did you say?" Nathaniel asked. He recognized the boy, or thought he did. The son of the florist, maybe 9 years old, maybe 10. He had seen him an hour earlier setting candles along the aisle with his mother, the two of them working quickly and quietly the way people work when they have been told to be finished before the guests arrive. The boy had looked up once when Nathaniel walked past, and Nathaniel had given him the small polite nod he gave to people whose names he did not know, and the boy had nodded back. "The ring on her finger, sir," the boy said, a little louder this time. "The one she has been wearing, it isn't real." Nathaniel lowered his hand slowly from his cuff. He was a man who had built a life on not reacting to surprises. He was 43 years old. He was the chief executive of Carrington Maritime, a shipping company his grandfather had founded in 1947 and which had been written about in the financial pages of newspapers in 6 countries. He did not change his wedding because a child appeared in a doorway. He did not change anything because of a feeling. He looked at the boy and tried to keep his voice steady. "Son," he said quietly, "what is your name?" The boy hesitated. Then he said, "Elijah." "Elijah," Nathaniel repeated, the way a man repeats a name when he wants to fix it inside his head before he decides what to do with it. "Elijah, I think you should explain that to me. And I think you should do it quickly, because in about 4 minutes those doors are going to open and I am going to walk down that aisle, and whatever you have to say to me you should say now." The boy did not rush. He shifted the small bunch of lilies to his left hand and stepped fully into the vestibule, and then he reached up and pulled the side door closed behind him with both hands, careful not to let it slam. Up close, Nathaniel could see that the boy's shirt was a borrowed white dress shirt with sleeves rolled twice at the cuffs to make them fit, and his black trousers were a little too short at the ankle. He smelled faintly of the eucalyptus the florist had been arranging at the altar all morning. His eyes were steady, the way the eyes of a child are steady when the child has decided, somewhere inside himself, that he is going to tell the truth even if no one believes him. "I work with my mom on weekends," Elijah said. "We did the flowers for your engagement party back in May. We did the flowers for the rehearsal dinner last night. And we did the flowers for today. I have seen the lady you are marrying 3 different times in the last 2 months. Each time she has been wearing the ring you gave her. And each time, sir, the ring has been a little different." Nathaniel did not move. He felt his own heartbeat in a place he was not used to feeling it, somewhere low under the bone of his chest. The cuff of his shirt was still half-buttoned. The organ outside the doors had moved into a quieter passage, the kind that comes just before a piece begins in earnest, and a small part of his mind noted the timing with a strange clinical calm, the way a man notes the time on a clock he is not yet ready to obey. "Different how?" he said. The boy took a small breath. His shoulders trembled once and then settled, the way a small bird settles on a branch after a long flight. "At the engagement party," Elijah said, "she was wearing a ring with a big square stone, very clear, with 2 smaller stones on the sides. I noticed it because my mom said it was the most beautiful ring she had ever seen up close, and she let me look at it from a few feet away when the lady was talking to someone else. The stone caught the light in a way that made small rainbows on the wall behind her. My mom said that was because of how diamonds bend the light. Nathaniel nodded slowly. He remembered the ring. He had spent 4 months choosing it. He had flown to a jeweler in Antwerp twice. The center stone was 3.5 carats, cut to specifications his grandmother had recommended before she died, and the two side stones had come from a brooch that had belonged to his mother. He had given the ring to Vivian Ashford on a Sunday afternoon in March in the small garden behind his apartment on the river, and she had cried. "Go on," he said quietly. "At the rehearsal dinner last night," Elijah continued, "she was wearing a ring. It looked almost the same. The big stone in the middle and the two smaller ones on the sides, but the stone in the middle was different. It did not catch the light the same way. When she walked past the candles, the stone got bright for a second and then went dull. A real diamond does not do that, sir. My mom taught me. A real diamond keeps the light. A fake one shows it and then loses it. I watched her for almost 10 minutes from the corner where I was helping with the centerpieces. The ring did not behave like the ring from May." Nathaniel felt the small marble floor under his shoes become very specific beneath his weight. He felt the weight of every guest on the other side of the doors. He felt the heavy oak of the doors themselves and the 4 minutes that were now closer to 3. "And today," he said. "Today," the boy said. "She came in through the side entrance about 40 minutes ago, the one near the sacristy. She was already in her dress. She walked past where my mom and I were finishing the altar arrangements. She was holding her hand a little strangely, almost closed, the way a person holds a hand when they don't want anyone to see what is on it. I saw her ring for only a second, but it was a different ring again, sir. The center stone was smaller. The setting was thinner. The two side stones were not the same size as each other. It was a ring that looked like the first one if you were not paying attention, but it was not the first one." Nathaniel did not speak. He looked past the boy at the heavy side door, and then at the wooden door of the small room across the vestibule where the bride was meant to be waiting with her mother and her two attendants for the final 10 minutes before the ceremony began. "Elijah," he said quietly, "I need you to tell me something, and I need you to be honest, even if the honest answer is that you are not sure. Do you think she switched the ring? Or do you think the ring she has been wearing all along was never the one I gave her?" The boy thought about it carefully. He did not rush. He had the kind of carefulness in his face that Nathaniel had seen, over the years, only in people who had grown up understanding that the wrong word in the wrong room could end a conversation forever. "Sir," Elijah said finally, "I think the ring you gave her, the real one with the big square stone, I think she has not been wearing it for a long time. The ring at the engagement party in May, the first one I saw, the one my mom said was the most beautiful, that was the real one. But every ring after that, I think, has been a copy, a different copy each time, like she keeps losing the copies and getting new ones made, or like she keeps selling them." Nathaniel closed his eyes for one long second. He had built a life on noticing things. He had built a company on noticing things. He had noticed, over the past 9 months, 100 small details about the woman he was about to marry. He had noticed that she preferred her coffee with 2 sugars on Mondays and 1 on Fridays. He had noticed that she touched her hair when she was thinking about money. He had noticed that her mother spoke a little too quickly when the subject of the prenuptial agreement had come up at dinner in February. He had noticed all of these things and decided that none of them mattered because he was 43 years old and he had spent the last 20 of those years building something he could not bring to bed with him at night. He opened his eyes. "Elijah," he said quietly, "I want you to do something for me. I want you to step into the small room across the vestibule. The door is unlocked. There is no one in it. I want you to sit on the bench inside and I want you to wait there. Do not come out unless I open the door. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good." The boy walked across the marble and into the small room without looking back. He pulled the door almost shut behind him, leaving a thin line of light. Nathaniel stood alone in the vestibule for the length of 2 breaths. The organ outside had begun the piece in earnest now. The doors would open in 90 seconds. The aisle was ready. The guests were waiting. The priest was waiting at the altar with his hands folded the way he had folded them at 22 other weddings Nathaniel had attended over the years. Nathaniel turned slowly and walked toward the wooden door of the bride's room. He did not knock. He simply turned the brass handle and opened the door. The room was small and warm. There was a tall mirror against the far wall, the kind that leaned slightly forward on a wooden frame, and a low velvet bench beneath it, and a vanity table with a vase of cream-colored roses that the florist had placed there an hour earlier. The light came from two narrow stained-glass windows high on the wall, and it fell across the room in pale blues and greens, the color of shallow water. Vivian Ashford was standing in front of the mirror with her back to the door. Her mother, Elaine, was seated on the velvet bench arranging the train of the dress. The two bridesmaids were near the vanity, one adjusting a hairpin, the other tucking a small white handkerchief into a sleeve. All four women turned when the door opened. For 1 second, no one spoke. Vivian's face moved through 3 expressions in less than a breath. Surprise first, then something that almost looked like fear, and then the calm, practiced smile she wore in photographs. "Nathaniel," she said, "you aren't supposed to see me before the ceremony. It's bad luck." "Vivian," he said quietly, "I need to speak with you, alone, just for 1 minute." Elaine Ashford stood up from the bench. She was a tall woman in her early 60s with the kind of upright posture that came from a lifetime of expecting to be listened to. She smiled at him the way she always smiled at him, with her mouth and not her eyes. "Nathaniel, dear, the ceremony begins in less than a minute. Whatever this is, surely it can wait until after." "It cannot," he said. He kept his voice gentle. He had learned in 20 years of business that the gentlest voice in a room was almost always the one that ended the conversation. "Ladies, would you give us the room, please? I will not keep her long." The two bridesmaids glanced at Elaine. Elaine looked at her daughter. Vivian gave the smallest nod. The 3 women left the room with the soft rustle of silk and shoes against carpet, and the door clicked shut behind them. Nathaniel did not move from where he stood. Vivian turned to face him fully now. The dress was beautiful, an ivory silk that had been altered 3 times to fit her exactly, and her dark hair was pinned back beneath a veil of antique lace that had been in her family. She had told him since the 1880s. Her left hand rested at her side, half-curled, the way a person holds a hand when they do not want anyone to see what is on it. "Vivian," Nathaniel said quietly, "I want to see your ring." There was a small pause. It lasted perhaps half a second longer than it should have. "My ring." "Yes, the ring I gave you in March. Hold up your left hand, please," she smiled. The smile was almost convincing. "Nathaniel, what is this? You are being strange. Has someone said something to you? Is this one of your business calls bleeding into our day? Whatever it is, it can wait 1 hour." He did not raise his voice. He did not move toward her. "Hold up your left hand, please," he said again. Her smile faded by degrees. She raised her left hand slowly. The ring was on the 4th finger. From a distance of 5 feet in the watery blue-green light of the small room, it looked like the ring he had given her in March. The same setting, the same square center stone, the same 2 smaller stones at the sides. He took 2 slow steps toward her. He stopped close enough to see clearly. The center stone did not catch the light the way the original had. It had a flat brightness to it, the kind of brightness that depends on the angle, not on the depth of the cut. The 2 side stones were not perfectly matched. One was a half shade warmer than the other. The prongs of the setting were the same shape, but the metal had a slightly different finish, as if it had been polished too quickly. He looked at her face. "Vivian," he said quietly, "this is not the ring I gave you." She did not answer for a moment. Her chin lifted a small fraction. He had seen her use that motion at dinners with people she did not like, just before she changed the subject. "Of course it is, Nathaniel. Don't be ridiculous. I have not taken it off since you gave it to me. You watched me put it on yourself." "I watched you put on a ring," he said. "I am not certain it has been the same ring since." Her hand closed slightly. It was the smallest movement. A person who was not looking for it would not have seen it. He had been looking for it. "Who told you this?" she said. Her voice had changed. It was lower now. The practiced smile was gone. Who has been talking to you? Was it your sister? Was it that lawyer of yours, what's his name, with the awful tie? Whatever they said, Nathaniel, they are wrong. It was a boy, he said. A boy who works with his mother arranging flowers. He has seen you 3 times in 2 months. He noticed before I did. She looked at him for a long second. And then slowly the calm came back into her face. Not the practiced smile this time, something colder, something he had not seen in 9 months. A boy, she repeated softly. A child noticed, from the corner where he was setting candles, and you believed him. I believed him, Nathaniel said quietly, because the moment he said it, I realized I had already known. Vivian was silent for a long moment. Outside the door, far away through the heavy stone of the cathedral, the organ moved into the opening phrases of the processional. The piece they had chosen together in February, sitting on the bench of an old piano in his apartment, while she rested her head against his shoulder and told him that this was the happiest she had ever been. The notes climbed slowly. Somewhere on the other side of the oak doors, 300 guests were beginning to stand. She lowered her hand. The ring caught the watery light once and then, exactly as the boy had said, lost it. Nathaniel, she said quietly, this is not the place. There are 300 people out there. There are photographers from 2 magazines. There is my father who flew in from London yesterday. There is your board. Whatever you think you know, this is not the moment to discuss it. Walk down the aisle with me. We will speak about this tonight. We will speak about it tomorrow. We will speak about it for as long as you want, but not here, not now. Vivian, he said, where is the ring I gave you in March? She did not answer. Vivian, where is it? She turned slightly away from him toward the mirror. She looked at her own reflection for a long second, and he watched her do it, and he understood that she was not looking at herself the way a bride looks at herself before she walks down an aisle. She was looking at herself the way a player at a card table looks at the cards in her hand when the round has not gone the way she planned. It is in a safe, she said finally, in a building on the east side. It has been there since June. Why? She did not turn back to face him. She spoke to the mirror. Because I needed it to be there. Because there were things I had to pay for, Nathaniel, that I could not ask you to pay for. Because my father's business has not been what he has told you it has been. Because my mother has been writing checks she has no money to cover, to charities, and to a man in Geneva she calls her financial advisor, who is neither financial nor an advisor. Because when you gave me that ring, I understood for the first time in 3 years that there was something I owned that was worth enough to fix what my family had broken. And I told myself I would buy it back. I told myself I would replace it before the wedding. I had a copy made in April, and then I had to sell the copy in June, and then I had another copy made, and then I had to sell that one too. She said all of it without any particular emotion. She said it the way a person reads a list of expenses to an accountant who has already seen the worst of it. Nathaniel stood very still. How much? He said quietly. The original. How much did you get for it? 312,000, she said. From a private buyer in Zurich. My mother arranged it. My mother arranged all of it. And the copies? 8,000 each, sometimes 9. I sold them through a man in the diamond district who does not ask questions when the seller is desperate and the stones are small. And the ring on your finger right now, today, it cost 6,000, she said. I picked it up 2 days ago. The original jeweler I used has stopped returning my calls. This one was made by a man in Queens who could do it in 4 days. It is not as well made as the others. The boy was right. He was right about everything. I knew when I put it on this morning that it would not pass close inspection. I told myself no one would look at it closely until after the ceremony. I told myself I would have until tomorrow to think of what to say. She turned then finally and looked at him. Nathaniel, she said, I was going to tell you tonight. I was going to tell you everything. I had a letter written. It is in my mother's handbag right now. I was going to give it to you at the hotel. I was going to ask you to forgive me. I was going to ask you to let me make it right over the years we had ahead of us. He looked at her for a long moment. He thought about the apartment on the river. He thought about the garden in March. He thought about the way she had cried when he opened the small velvet box and held the ring up to the late afternoon light. He thought about how in that moment he had believed that her tears were for him. He had been wrong. He understood that now. The tears had been real, but they had not been for him. They had been for the relief of a woman who had just been handed a thing she could turn into money. "Vivian," he said quietly, "the ring is not the part that matters. The ring is only an object. Objects can be replaced. What I am trying to understand is why you did not ask me. In 9 months, Vivian, I am not a man who counts every coin. You have eaten at my table. You have met my sister. You have met my accountant. You have met 3 of the men I trust most in the world. Any one of them would have helped you. I would have helped you. The amount you sold the ring for, $312,000, is a number I could have written a check for in the time it would have taken you to finish a sentence. Why did you not ask me?" She did not answer for a long time. When she did, her voice was very small. "Because I did not want you to know what kind of family you were marrying into." Nathaniel looked at her for one long second. There was something in her voice he had not heard before. Not the cold calm of a minute earlier, not the practiced softness of the past 9 months. It was the voice of a woman who, somewhere behind all of it, was still 26 years old and ashamed of her own mother. He almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Vivian," he said quietly, "I would have known the kind of family I was marrying into the moment I asked. I would have helped anyway. I do not marry portfolios, I marry people. If you had told me in April that your father's business was failing, I would have looked at the books with him myself. If you had told me that your mother was writing checks she could not cover, I would have called my own attorney, and we would have stopped the bleeding before it became a flood. I would not have loved you any less. I might have loved you more, because I would have known that you trusted me with the truth." She did not speak. "Instead," he said, "you sold the ring my grandmother helped me design. You sold the side stones that came from a brooch my mother wore at her own wedding in 1958. You sold them to a stranger in Zurich, and you replaced them with glass, and you let me put that glass on your finger and walk into rooms with you for 9 months, and you let me bring you to my sister's house on Thanksgiving, and you let me stand with you at my grandfather's grave on the anniversary of his death, and the whole time you knew that the ring on your hand was a lie." He stopped. He had not raised his voice. He realized with a small clinical part of his mind that he was not going to. "I would have helped you, Vivian. I am not telling you this to hurt you. I am telling you because it is the part you will have to live with. You did not lose me by needing money. You lost me by deciding I was the kind of man who could not be trusted with the truth." The organ outside the door had now finished the opening of the processional and was holding on a soft sustained chord, the way it does in the half-minute before the doors open. Somewhere in the cathedral, a coordinator with a clipboard was looking at her watch and beginning to wonder. Vivian sat down slowly on the velvet bench. The dress arranged itself in heavy folds around her. She did not cry. She put her hands flat on her knees and looked at the floor. "What are you going to do?" she said. Nathaniel did not answer right away. He turned and walked back to the door of the small room. He opened it. The vestibule was empty. The light through the stained glass behind him made the same red and gold pattern on the marble that it had made 11 minutes earlier, when his life had been one thing and was now another. He crossed the vestibule. He opened the door of the room across from hers. Elijah was sitting on the bench inside, exactly where Nathaniel had asked him to sit, with the small bunch of white lilies still resting on his lap. The boy looked up. "Elijah," Nathaniel said quietly, "I need you to come with me. I am not going to ask you to say anything. I am only going to ask you to stand beside me for a few minutes while I do something that I have to do. Is that all right?" "Yes, sir." "Good." The boy stood up. He carried the lilies with him because he did not know what else to do with them. They walked together across the vestibule. Nathaniel did not return to Vivian's room. He went instead to the far door, the one that led to a small side corridor that ran behind the altar and came out at the rear of the choir stalls. He stopped before he opened it. "Elijah," he said, "in about 2 minutes I am going to walk into the cathedral. I am going to walk past 300 people. I am going to walk up to the altar where the priest is waiting, and then I am going to do something that none of those people are expecting. I want you to walk in with me, but not all the way to the altar. There is a small side pew, 2 rows from the front on the left side, that has been reserved for the florists and the staff. Your mother is sitting in it. I want you to go and sit beside her. I do not want you in the front. I do not want you near me when this happens. I want you safe with her. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Good. And Elijah, the boy looked up. Thank you. Whatever happens next in the next 10 minutes, in the next 10 years, I want you to remember that you did the right thing this morning. You looked at something carefully when no one else was looking. You told a stranger the truth even though you did not have to. There are men 3 times your age in that cathedral right now who have never done what you did this morning. I want you to know that I know it. The boy did not say anything. He nodded once, the way he had nodded in the vestibule 11 minutes earlier, the small, steady nod of a child who had been raised to receive a serious thing seriously. Nathaniel opened the side door. The light of the cathedral fell across them. The cathedral was enormous in the way only old buildings are enormous, with a ceiling so high that the sound of 300 people standing rose into it and disappeared. The morning light came down through the high windows in long pale beams, and the air smelled of beeswax and lilies and the faint cedar of the old pews. Nathaniel stepped through the side door into the corridor behind the altar. He walked the short distance to the opening at the rear of the choir stalls, and there he paused for a moment, in the small shadow where the marble of the apse met the wood of the stalls, and looked out across the nave. 300 faces. Many of them familiar. His sister Margaret in the second row on the right with her husband and their 2 daughters. 3 members of his board. The mayor, whom he had not invited but who had come anyway because the wedding had been written about in a magazine. His grandfather's oldest business partner, 91 years old, sitting between his grandson and his granddaughter in the 3rd row. A small woman with her hair tied back, wearing a simple gray dress, sitting in the side pew 2 rows from the front, who looked up the moment Elijah stepped into the side aisle, and whose hand went to her chest the way a mother's hand goes to her chest when she does not yet understand what is happening, but understands that something is. The priest was at the altar. He was a kind man in his late 70s whom Nathaniel had known since he was a boy. He saw Nathaniel emerge from the side and his eyebrows rose by the smallest fraction, because grooms did not enter from the side and the doors at the back had not yet opened. Nathaniel walked. He walked to the foot of the altar, past the wooden communion rail and stopped in front of the priest. Elijah, in the side aisle, walked quickly and quietly to where his mother was sitting. He slipped into the pew beside her. She put her arm around his shoulders without taking her eyes off Nathaniel. The cathedral became very quiet. It became quiet in stages. The people who could see Nathaniel directly fell silent first, then the people behind them, then the people at the very back. The organist, who had been holding the sustained chord that came before the processional, played one more soft phrase that he had not planned to play, the way an organist will sometimes improvise a moment of grace when he senses that the program he has been given is no longer the program of the day. Then he, too, fell silent. 300 people stood in stillness. Nathaniel turned slowly with his back to the altar and faced the room. "My friends," he said. The cathedral acoustics carried the 2 words almost without effort. He had spoken at his grandfather's funeral in this same building 8 years earlier. He had learned that day that the room would do most of the work for him if he simply spoke clearly and slowly. "My friends," he said again, "I owe you all an apology. You have come here this morning from many cities and from 3 countries. You have rearranged your work and your weeks. You have bought gifts. You have written cards. You have put on suits that you do not enjoy wearing. You have done all of this because you were invited to witness a marriage, and the marriage is not going to take place." He paused. A small intake of breath moved through the room like a wave. Margaret in the second row raised one hand slowly to her mouth. 2 of the bridesmaids, who had returned from the bride's room and were standing near the rear doors of the cathedral, exchanged a look that contained no surprise, only a kind of resigned recognition, as if some part of them had been bracing for this for longer than they had admitted to themselves. "I am not going to explain to you, in this room, the reason," Nathaniel said. "It is not the kind of reason that should be discussed in front of 300 people on a Saturday morning. It is a private matter. It will remain a private matter. I will say only this. The decision is mine. It is not Vivian's. I am asking you not to blame her in your conversations on the way home. I am asking you not to gossip in ways that will reach her family. There has been a misunderstanding between us. I have decided that it is a misunderstanding too large to walk past. I am the one ending the ceremony. Any anger you feel, please direct it at me." He looked around the room. "Father Wellen," he said quietly, turning slightly toward the priest, "I am sorry. You prepared us for this morning with great care. I will come to see you next week. I will come alone." The priest, who had heard many things in 51 years of standing at altars, simply nodded once. There was no judgment in his face. There was something almost like compassion. He had seen in those 51 years a number of weddings that should have been stopped and only one or two that actually were. He understood, looking at Nathaniel, that he was watching one of the rare ones. Nathaniel turned back to the room. "The reception was to be held at the Hartwell Hotel beginning at 1 o'clock, he said. "The food has been prepared. The musicians have been booked. The rooms have been arranged. I would like you to go anyway, please. Eat the meal. Listen to the music. Spend the afternoon with the people you came with. I will pay for everything as planned. There is no reason for any of you to leave this morning hungry or empty-handed because of a decision I have made about my own life." He stopped. He looked, finally, toward the small side pew 2 rows from the front on the left. Elijah was sitting beside his mother. His mother had her arm around him. The boy was looking at Nathaniel with the same steady, unmoving attention that he had shown in the vestibule 11 minutes earlier. "There is one more thing,"